Here in the back later on. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Eugene Hernandez.
Thank you, Courtney. It's great to see so many old friends and former colleagues in the room. I have to say, on a personal note, I joined the Film Society almost exactly 7 months ago, and it was this building and these people in this room today that were a big part of the reason that I did that. And it's really exciting to be at this moment. It's a really exciting moment for us. I think it's safe to say we're all a little giddy. Yesterday afternoon, we literally cut the ribbon on the space, and so it's been a really exciting couple days for us to get to start sharing this place with more people. So let me just make a few introductions for those of you who may not know the people who are with us here. On the far end of the panel, let me introduce a man who you will hear more about today, and I invite you to ask him some questions after this conversation as well as we walk around the space more, but David Rockwell. And I know that the man next to David needs no introduction to everybody in this room, but I'll say his name anyway because he's the longtime program director of the Film Society of Lincoln Center, 20 plus years, coming up on 23, 24 years now. Not to date him, he was 6 when he started, but Richard Peña. Seated in the middle of the room is someone who joined the Film Society just 10 months ago, under a year ago. Welcome, Rose Kuo, our executive director of the Film Society. Next to Rose is the president of the board of the Film Society of Lincoln Center, Dan Stern. And seated right here to my right and next to Dan is a woman who's our chairman of the board, and it's her birthday today. I'm embarrassing her. Ann Tenenbaum. So there are a few folks in the audience that I want to single out for a moment, and the first of which is arguably of the people in this room the most important, at least in my opinion, to this organization, who ran the organization for 33 years, and I ask her to stand up and turn around and wave to you, Joanne Koch. And we'll be pointing out some other folks. We have a number of the Film Society staff here, and if I could just quickly ask everybody on the staff of the Film Society, just so you can see them and talk to them after, to please quickly stand up. Marion, Scott, Michael, Bingham Ray's here. I see, who else? Wave? Okay. So let me get started. I'm going to start with a question for Rose. And one of the things, Rose, about the building, and I think there's a fact sheet that will give you more details, but there are 2 cinemas in this space. There's this incredible amphitheater space. So we have the Francesca Beale Theater, which you can enter from the ramp here, and the Howard Gilman from the ramp back here. Let me take a step back and ask Rose to talk about, you joined the organization less than a year ago, what this moment, what this building means to the organization, and how the organization specifically is evolving to take advantage of this new facility, this new film center.
Well, we hope that the Film Center expands our community and our outreach and programming. We began that process by first expanding our staff, and of course with Eugene first last fall, and we also then added Bingham Ray, who is doing our first run theaters. Many of you know him as the founder of October Films. He was the president of United Artists and the head of creative affairs with Sidney Kimmel, and also the man who's responsible for launching Mike Lee. We added Courtney Ott, who's head of publicity and marketing. Many of you know her. She's one of the architects of IFC's first run features. And we are very lucky that we have so many film enthusiasts on our staff. We were able to lure over Christina Maruta, who's the founder of the Indian Film Festival LA, as our individual giving head, and Matt Bolish, who's the former director of programming at Greek Festival and Anaheim Film Festivals. And Even on my own staff, Jen Van Patten, who has a master's degree in critical studies, sadly for her, when she got out of school last year, there were no more film criticism jobs. So lucky for us, she came onto our staff. But we are hoping to really develop some new educational programs, and towards that end, we have partnered with Ghetto Film School in the Bronx. And we are also very excited about bringing IFP home to the New York Film Festival. So this fall, we debut an Emergent Artist program at the New York Film Festival. Our outreach includes going nationwide. So we've started a partnership with Emerging Pictures, and we'll be streaming video live to about 100 theaters across the country. And that'll start during our launch week. And we're very excited about our new partnership with NewFest.
I'm going to bring Richard into the discussion. Richard, in a moment we'll talk about the tech aspects and the design aspects of the building, but let me ask you, as program director, and you've been through not only 20 years ago now, the Walter Reed opening, and that having a tremendous dramatic impact on the organization, now with the Film Center, perhaps talking a bit about how the organization will expand, evolve, and sort of where this building, from a programmatic concept, sort of allows you to take it.
I think that for me, the key word is, in a way, flexibility. I think having one screen like the Walter Reed has obviously been tremendous for us and allowed us to do many things that we could only dream about before. But now, of course, having the 2 additional theaters plus this amphitheater, I think we have the ability to do, as has been said, first runs, to do other kinds of, I think, more educational programs, a lot more discussions, seminars, workshops, things like that, plus to use this space perhaps for ambient works, video art, shorts, many things like that. So again, I think with each new kind of addition, it just expands what we can do. Things that we've already been doing to a certain extent, but now, of course, we'll be able to do them, I think, more frequently and hopefully even better.
Cool. We're going to have time in a little while for some questions from you, so I want to make sure that we have our wireless microphones ready in a few minutes. Brent's giving me the thumbs up. Let me come back to Ann. Again, happy birthday. Ann presided over our...
It's a bad one.
It's Ann presided over our ribbon cutting yesterday with Senator Gillibrand, and you can see in the packet her background is a broad supporter of the arts. Let me just ask you, Ann, to elaborate on, from your vantage point, not only as the chairman of this organization, but as someone who's involved with the arts in general in this city, the impact that you feel this building and this moment has on the arts in general for New York City.
One of the things I've been thinking about is how it changed this building and the visibility that the Film Society now has on the Lincoln Center campus. Mm-hmm. I think changes the conversation about film at Lincoln Center, mm-hmm. as well as uptown. Mm-hmm. I think there's been limited opportunities for a lot of really interesting programming to be done uptown. It's sort of it's been, not all of it, but a lot of it is filtered downtown, and uptown has suffered a little bit because of that. Mm-hmm. And I think this brings that opportunity back to uptown, which is very exciting, I think, being someone who lives uptown and has too many kids to get downtown ever. And I also think it raises the bar on the discussion about the art of film. We did amazing things, but we were tucked away at Lincoln Center, and we were easy to ignore. We're very visible now. Mm-hmm. And we're not easy to ignore. And we are bringing the young the young audiences into Lincoln Center. This is what they're desperate for. Mm-hmm. Luring people in with what they're interested in, and we're doing it now by opening this film center. So I think it actually has a huge impact on the arts in New York City.
Well, observationally, we've been working in the space obviously for me for months and others for years, but in the last few days, as we've kind of taken the coverings off a lot of the signs, we've noticed, as the lights have gone on, the last few days, we've noticed a lot of people just trying to come into the space, literally thinking that, the ticker's on and the signage is up and people literally want to walk into the space. And we've had a lot of inquiries of people just wanting to get their hands on tickets to the space.
Yeah, well,
so it's been
for
very
years,
exciting.
it's been, yes, film is important, sort of, but we're going to just tuck you back there, and you're not the Metropolitan Opera, and you're not the ballet, and you're not... but in fact, it's a new world, and we are what's exciting, or we're certainly on par with what's exciting, and now we can show that to everybody in a different way. So I'm thrilled about it.
Which is a perfect moment to bring in Dan, because I want to ask you, Dan, and you talked about this yesterday a bit at the ribbon cutting. I understand you've been friends with David for a number of years, for a long time now. Can you just share some of the anecdotes and the stories about how the two of you sort of, I remember a story about you guys walking around Lincoln Center, and then how this sort of came about and being in this space.
Well, I think like most cultural organizations, there's a constant search for what can be better, and not just us, but the other constituents on campus, all 12 of us. And I can't remember the date, but I think it was about 9 years ago in one of our building committee meetings, we thought about all these issues. How can we be more visible, and how come more people know about us and not feel tucked back where the Walter Reed is? So there was an emphasis for some new space, not just from us, from other constituents, and there was a design that was sort of linked to the campus but off campus. And in that meeting, we sort of looked at the Diller and Scofidio master plan and this restaurant that's above us and the floppy meadow. And we said, this is really terrific, but we should be front and center. That's our real need. And what about this space underneath, which was not used? And, we as the committee sort of were thinking about it. And I said, when I think about things like this, where you have a what if and you need a dreamer to look at something when no one can see it and figure it out, the person, at least in my life, I knew, which was David, I helped start Starwood Hotels and Starwood Capital, and so we did the first W Hotel together, which David did, and I watched sort of his imagination at work. And so I would just call David and said, David, what if we thought about putting this right in the middle of everything, not back off campus, but linked? And he was the perfect person, not only because he's so inventive, but and a bit of a dreamer, but I knew he knew Liz Diller and the whole team there, but so we could collaborate well. And that was the sort of thought. And David came back, and I called him that day, and he came back very quickly and said, I've investigated this massive pipes and maintenance space and all sorts of stuff, and I think we could actually do it. In fact, here's a drawing, and it began a process. And it was just a little tiny sketch, which I should have kept. And I thought, God, this is possible. And it was pro bono, by the way. I called him. I said, David, we have no money to pay you for this, and we've been friends a long time. So I'm just asking you to do this for us. And he did, and it just snowballed from there. And Lincoln Center was incredibly gracious at working with us on moving, because what looked simple here was a lot of load on top of this, you can imagine, and all the stuff that's above, and pipes and maintenance and 12 constituents thinking about space. So they were incredibly gracious and constructive, and wanted, I think, to take as much space geometrically on this campus and make it presentation space as they could. So they were great, and David just ran with it, and there it went.
And you later raised a fair amount of money so you could pay David and his
team. Yeah, well, there was a minor, $40-50 million in between us, but
which is a good moment to bring David into the discussion, because I want to hear the flip side of that conversation now. I want to hear about. Tell me about the other end of that phone call, and then some of the things that you dealt with in this space, which was garage space, office space. I mean, just give us a snapshot of what you saw and what you saw as an opportunity.
Well, we were obviously, I was thrilled to get the phone call, and looked around and was aware of, although I didn't realize just how extraordinary the whole reinvention of Lincoln Center was going to be. And when I first came to New York as an architecture student, loved Lincoln Center, and felt like many people that it was slightly feudal. There were a series of individual amazing arts institutions with not a lot of communication between them, but was a frequent user of Lincoln Center and loved coming here, and had a subscription to most constituents at one point or another. And I started to look at this opportunity and realized that there were a couple things. One is, in speaking to the board, and the board was extraordinary. I got to say, a 9-year process with a board doesn't always result in a good product. I mean, when you think about how much time there is to think and change and modify, and part of our schedule was driven by, obviously, Lincoln Center schedule, since we were fitting into them finishing the work around this. But I quickly realized that, that there was this opportunity, because so many people thought of Film Society as the film festival, and that this was a chance to create perhaps certainly the most spontaneous constituent of Lincoln Center. It's the only one you can come up and get a ticket 15 minutes before. And so we realized there needed to be a kind of fluency and a spontaneity and an informality. And the space had been a parking garage. And if you look up along the sides and you see the concrete waffle slab, that's the original ceiling, and that column is one of the original structures. So there were great assets to the character of it. There was great asset to the visibility on 65th Street, and on the exterior, our goal was to create an identity for Film Society that would stand out. And so we collaborated with Dilys Cafidio Renfro and looked at a way to do a facade that was Lincoln Center, but perhaps slightly less formal, and could speak as much about the history of the Film Society. So there's 1,000 names silk screened on about 90 foot of frontage of films that have played here, and the box office actually cantilevers out over 65th Street and becomes the marquee. Once you come in, the truth is, to get to the screening rooms, we had to go far enough back to get over one of the challenges of the space, and that is we're sitting right over the central mechanical plant for all of Lincoln Center. And clearly, more than anything else, these screening rooms had to be the best possible presentation for film, sound, lighting. There was a whole trip to Bogota to work on the chairs, which is, but every part of the screening rooms had to support the most extraordinary presentation of film possible, which meant no screening rooms could happen in between 65th Street and this wall, which is the back wall of the projection room. And we had to excavate deep enough to get headroom for stadium seating. And as we looked at this space, we proposed the idea of a flex space that would be over the process. It's become a much more refined design, with, as Dan and I were talking about, the board pushing and prodding, and but it essentially is the living room of the complex, and it's a place to come and not just see great film, but have a conversation about film, or find people who agree or disagree. And the location of the 40 or 50 seat cafe with visibility to the street, again, pushing accessibility and spontaneity, polished concrete floor that is a kind of nod to the roots of the space, creates a real community of spaces that Film Society was very interested in figuring out how to program. And as you walk around the space, you'll see that the screening rooms can be entered through these two ramps, but then you can exit either one of them into the amphitheater. So there can be a film and a director conversation. There can be a presentation before and then entering to the film. So it's a very curatable thing, and it's thrilling. It is a opportunity for us to participate in, I think, a seminal reinvention of one of New York's great landmarks. So we feel very fortunate, and the 9 years went by just like that.
I'm just going to ask one more question, so let's get those wireless microphones ready. Let me go back to Richard. So what's happening here is, we cut the ribbon yesterday. We have you guys here with us today, and over the next week or so, we've got a number of special events for people who've helped put this building together and fund it and make it happen for us. But next weekend, we're having a number of free events for the public, open to the public entirely, and for free. Let me ask Richard to sort of elaborate on a few of the events that we have coming up, and there's also a brochure, as Courtney mentioned, that lists the schedule as well.
when we were sort of presented with the challenge of what we were going to do to open the space, you always think, is there one film or is there something you can do that's really going to mark this? And I think it soon became clear that what we wanted to do was, in the 3 days of public events, present as wide a panorama of the kinds of things that we normally do and perhaps that we've become known for over the years. So from June 10th through the 12th, we'll have a number of events. We'll have everything from restorations. The Hong Kong Film Archive is allowing us to show their recent restoration of Confucius, an extraordinary film from 1940 by Fei Mu. The Cinémathèque Française has sent us Grébiche, a film from Film d'Albatros, the company that was run by Russian emigres in Paris from the 1920s, and that will be shown with live musical accompaniment. We'll have premieres of upcoming films. We'll have a lecture by Frederick Jameson on the future of film. Antonio Damasio, the great neuroscientist, is coming to talk about film and cognitive film theory, the way in which new metaphors or new paradigms, I should say, have come up about how, in fact, we understand films. We'll have evenings with the Coen brothers, with Oliver Stone, with Paul Schrader. So we just really have a great number of events. I think the idea was to have a little bit of a three-ring circus over the 3 days, with events going on simultaneously. And, in one day you'll be able to see a great revival, hear a great lecture, listen to a contemporary filmmaker, or see a premiere. So that's what the 3 days will be. We hope you'll all come down and enjoy it. And we hope to introduce the spaces and to reacquaint people with the Walter Reed as well during those 3 days. So should be fun.
So let's switch gears. I want to get to some questions from folks in the audience. If you have a question, raise your hand. Let me get a microphone to you. And so if you come on down to the third row here, we have a question on the. Tell us who you are. Reintroduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Edward Douglas from ComingSoon.net. Hi. I have a question about the, obviously this is going to be competing more with some places like the Film Forum and Lincoln Plaza and theaters like that, because you have first-run movies here. I was curious, what was the decision to make such small theaters compared to some of the other theaters out there? The screening rooms are smaller. And also, what about ticket prices? I'm curious about how competitive ticket prices will be compared to other similar theaters doing first-run movies.
I think I could say, in terms of the size, some of it was somewhat dictated a little bit by the space, and I think we decided we wanted to have 2 theaters as opposed to 1. So, again, I think there are a lot of programs that we have where 90 seats will be just perfect. That will really be, in a certain way, the kind of target audience for that. The other one is 150 seats, I think is especially good for extended runs or whatever that might be going over a week or 2. So I think it was a little bit dictated by the space, but we never really thought of, I think, having another similar-sized Walter Reed Theater. We already have a 268-seat house, so the choices would have been either to go up or to go down, and we chose to go down.
What about ticket prices? Are they going to be very competitive with what's out there?
We're charging? Oh, no, sorry.
They're going to be very similar to the other comparable institutions like Film Forum, IFC, the Lincoln Plaza cinemas. We're actually setting ticket prices as we speak, but they'll be very similar.
We have another microphone on this side, so you have some hands down here. Yes. Yeah.
Will all the ticket prices fall under the membership so that you can get the reduced rates and so on and so forth? And talk about what you're going to do about promoting the membership further, and what other special features you might be offering.
We'll have a general admission ticket price for the public. Then there'll be a reduced price for members and for senior citizens and students. We have that price structure currently, so there's just going to be a slight modification to make it more in line with the other organizations around the city. We're about $1 lower, I think, than everybody else right now. And then we're currently examining our member and patron programs. I think we're going to be offering a lot of new programs for members and patrons, especially because of this space in particular. I think we're going to be having directors' dialogues here on a weekly basis and panels. Richard wants to start a film education program this fall after Labor Day. So much like signing up for an adult education class at one of the universities, this will be a great place because you won't have to sign up in advance or just drop in. There'll be a reoccurring series every month. So.
Let's come down here for David.
Hi, David Darcy. Just simple question for David Rockwell. The slots, is that a sprocket motif? Can you tell us something about that? And then just two other questions. Architects, whether they like it or not, are always incorporating history. Where do you see the past of cinema in this design? And then one other quick thing, and how is this going to be a template benchmark for designing the way we experience movies?
So the room that we're in is maple strips that start on the floor and are kind of a welcome mat when you come in, wrap down the bleachers up this wall and around. The slots allow us to incorporate both air conditioning and sound absorption. So they grew out of that. It's also a space that you very much see in section. So the ceiling tiers down so that it's transparent, and we wanted as much as possible. You can see the glass wall is frosted at the bottom, so when you won't be distracted by seeing people online, but you'll see through and you can see the rest of that. The space incorporates several innovations that in some ways relate to both the history of the space and in cinema, as you said. One is in the screening rooms, we did a lot of research into what to do with the walls, because obviously you have to absorb all of the sound. You want reinforced sound and you don't want bounce off of the walls. And we felt like the traditional solution of fabric panels didn't quite offer the sense of occasion. It's when the lights dim and you're seeing the movie, you want the walls to go away totally. But when you walk in, you want to see a little reflection. So we have pleated custom panels that we designed, perforated metal, that in some ways harken back to Italian theaters of the 20s and look like origami pleated fabric. And those perforations have the acoustical absorption on the inside. And in terms, the last question was how this would apply to other people thinking about.
Yeah, where do you see it setting a benchmark or as a template for where cinema design is going?
Well, that's hard. I think this grows out of so many unique conditions that relate to film society. But I mean, one thing that did occur to me in thinking about it is we spend so much time in our lives looking at small screens, and content at home has become so great, and you can see, movies anywhere. That part of the goal here was to create a place that was about the community of film, and not just about seeing the film, but having conversation. And so this is very much based on the notion of not just having a one-on-one experience with a screen, but participating in a kind of community.
And also, I think you have to realize the process we went through here was not something that a normal commercial theater would go through. So we at the board obsessed over certain things. So we said we want the best theater experience you can imagine without compromise in sound and seat quality. So the board and a number of staff actually flew down to the best movie theater seat manufacturer in Colombia, the country, and camped out there literally for a relatively long period of time where they made seats, and we tried them. Actually, I couldn't make the trip, but Ann was there. We tried them, and we just obsessed on everything. We have extra wide handles and armrests. We have really comfortable seats. Please try them. We have, the room is very dark, and it's really the way film should be viewed. It's hard for a commercial operator to do that for reasons that include liability and other things. Just everything about it, the carpet, the way every sound bounce, we obsessed on. So I'm not sure how applicable.
Obsessed is a understatement, I would say.
And I think that we at the board pressed flexibility, because we said, look, why if we're going to make this leap financially and otherwise, let's allow ourselves to be creative. So we have a space. I'll give you a couple examples. We have a space that you won't see today, but there's a multi-purpose room that's rather large off to the side that can be a lounge, a conversation place, an education space. We have some 5 incredible designs for David, none of which we've executed on, because we said, let's open. We have the flexibility. It's not not being a commercial operator, to not have to maximize every piece of revenue on every square foot the day we open, to basically say, let's open and let's have a conversation with our members and patrons and say, wouldn't it be great 6 months later if we said, what if, God, now that we've opened it, we wish we had this? Well, we have that. So we've made many judgments that you wouldn't make. Another one is, during the process, Panasonic announced the newest screen you could possibly have. It's right here, 152 inches, flat panel, super high def. There is no film technology that actually takes advantage of the resolution. The resolution will have to catch up with what we have here in 3D. There's only one available in the world to see. There are 3 they've made. 2 are in private hands. And so this is it. And so in the middle of the process, we threw out all sorts of stuff that was here, and we said, we have to have that.
was in December.
When people come here, we want to make sure they have something special, and that we've honored these obsessive film people that we all are, and you can come and see the coolest new thing. So, but that was a lot of money and a lot of negotiating with Panasonic and changing everything. So we've been, not only has David done a great design, but he's been really flexible, which is hard on the designer, right? When the board comes and says, oh, we love this, but by the way, it needs to do this, 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 and this, and by the way, if we change our minds, it needs to do that. So, you'll see that in a lot of the spaces. It has flexibility for us to change things in the future. And this, obviously we thought of making this a small theater. It could have been the one we're sitting in. And I think we made a good compromise of, David, if you'll see up top, that's a garage door as a nod towards the garage. The garage door can come down. We worked a lot on the acoustics, and you can have a really interesting conversation here about a lot of things with this 3D screen. Or it can be a discussion like this. So it's very flexible space.
I also want to point out, which I really like a lot, are the if you look up at the top of that garage door, there are these silver cameras. There's 3 of them in this room. There are 3 HD cameras in this room, 2 in the back, 1 on the side. You'll see the same thing in the traditional cinemas, and that allows us to not only record, but create content that we can then share more widely. So we'll capture an event like this, as we are right now, and be able to share it either online after the fact, or ultimately also stream it to other places in partnership with other organizations, something that's very important to us. I saw another hand, Doris. Hi. Let's just get you a microphone. One sec, Doris.
I don't think I need one.
Just so, since we are recording this, we want to have your voice.
I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about your expansion into streaming to 100 theaters nationwide.
We've been working on partnerships with several different organizations. There's about 3 in the country currently who stream to theaters, depending on the theater chain. We picked Emerging Pictures because they're very committed to Arthouse theaters and independent theater owners, run by Ira Deutschman, who's been in independent art distribution for a very long time. He's been a pioneer in this area. So our first series is Britain with Love. We're going to be streaming a Q&A, and we're also going to be out to theaters that he works with, but we're also going to be streaming in something from London. And it's this weekend during the public launch.
I was going to ask Scott also to elaborate on that British program as well, if you don't mind. Scott Fondas from the Film Society, just since it's topical.
Yeah, basically it's a series of 6 recent British independent films that haven't been distributed in North America. The first one, Toast, is screening during our free launch weekend. It's a film starring Helena Bonham Carter. It's based on the memoir of the celebrity chef Nigel Slater, and we'll have the director of the film, S.J. Clarkson, here, but that conversation will be available live or delayed to the other theaters in the Emerging Pictures Network that are presenting the series, and then with the 5 other films in the series, there will be similar director, filmmaker conversations that will either originate here and be streamed out, or will originate in the UK and be streamed in to our theater and all the other theaters that are participating. We hope this is the first in many series like that to come.
One of the things that I noticed, I was fortunate enough to attend with Rose and some other folks with Gavin, the Arthouse Convergence conference, which takes place every year right before Sundance in Utah. And this was a really big topic, was not only the ability to share content, but the idea of using this technology as a way to help bolster and unite and unify and connect some of these theaters that are outside of the traditional multiplex and are all, in some cases struggling to survive, and are all trying to, sort of take steps to ensure their long-term profitability and survival, and there's a lot of interest in among these theaters to create these partnerships that will allow them to take content from each other and share it amongst themselves. So it's a big topic right now. We have time for just maybe one or two more questions if there are any. If we could do one here in the third row and then one in the very back over here, and then we'll get some lunch.
Thanks. Alvin Reese, Arts Management. How will the opening of this facility affect your overall budget, and what measures are you planning? Obviously, is going to cost more.
The budget's going up.
You heard it here first.
Sorry. I think all organizations like us faced some very challenging years recently, and not just in the not-for-profit sector. As all of you know, many art distributors who are in the commercial space went under in the last 3 years. And so what we do here is really, really important. There was a time in which filmmakers coming to the New York Film Festival all left with distributors for their films, and that's not the case today. Sometimes half of the films that come to the New York Film Festival are never seen again except at other film festivals. And so going into this arena of doing runs for films and continuing to publish magazines like Film Comment, and keeping this Arthouse distribution alive essentially now is almost a not-for-profit business. So in terms of our budget, it's going to increase. We actually don't know how it will be the next year. That's why we brought on Bingham Ray, who's been working in the space for 30 years, and we're thrilled to have him here helping us figure out how to plan for this in the next few years.
I would say a few things to think about. One, just to note, is so imagine taking this leap of faith financially for this nonprofit, and you have to raise most of the money during 2008 and 2009 during the financial crisis. Yet, here we are, and arguably this is among the best naming opportunities, the place we're sitting in now. You walk in, you see the big screen, it's the center of everything, and yet we haven't named this. So in a typical, and I are fortunate enough to be on a lot of boards, and in a typical organization, you would not be able to open up, especially in a financial crisis, without having named your primary assets. So we have lots of naming rights, and we're here and had the money to open, and so we're in good shape on it from a capital perspective. And we're also raising an endowment that has already started to fund programming losses. So we also have lots of revenue streams that we haven't had. So we obviously have the cafe, we have First Run, and we'll be able to do many more events. And we are, we have not compromised and done things like give awards out, which attracts eyeballs and therefore sponsors, and we're not going to do that. But we are much more attractive to sponsors. So our sponsorship revenue already, which I don't think we can announce all of them, but our sponsorship revenue is taking off pretty dramatically. So I think we feel like we've got many more revenue streams that are going to serve us well. We don't know exactly how it plays out.
I'd also like to say that, we are a not-for-profit arts organization, and we have a board of directors that is incredibly supportive, has been, and will continue to be, and that actually is a critical component. Board giving is a critical component of how you make a project like this a reality, and also an ongoing success. So, as Dan said, and Rose, it's a multi-tiered plan, and we have to go at it big guns from every direction.
Last thing I'll say, sorry, is you asked what the metrics are, and so we don't arrive at this or come to this with financial metrics, and so in the past we've looked at programs that we knew would fill a relatively small percentage of our existing house across the street, but we felt it was important, so we've been led by the programming, as you know, but now we actually have optimization, if you will, opportunities, because we'll do programming where, as Richard said earlier, a 90-seat theater is perfect, and we have other programming that can fill the house across the street. So there's all kinds of opportunities, and I think we feel pretty good about it. And I agree with him. We have an exceptionally supportive board.
Yeah, I'll just add, this is probably my 7th film organization, and the Film Society has the most robust board, one of the most engaged boards. It's been very impressive to be here these last 10 months, and You know, we started with a goal of 40 million. When I got here, it was about 32 million that we'd raised. Today, we have over 38 million raised, so we're very, very close to closing out the goal for this facility, and as Dan says, start a endowment program. But we have a board. We're very lucky to have a board that is filled with film lovers, so led by Ann and Dan. So.
There was another question. Yes, hi.
Hi, there's two parts to this question. The first one is Lincoln Center has historically appealed to an older demographic. I was curious why in the theaters you don't have a lot of seating for handicapped people or people with wheelchairs. I know that Film Society is doing a big push for a younger demographic, which is good because we need to get them into the film culture. On the flip side, this probably goes towards David, is the younger generation is, what's a nice way to put it? They're predominantly hitting the obesity level at faster and faster rates. So the seats are not wide enough for people who are larger.
So in terms of ADA accessibility, Michael Fisher is here. The theaters are fully ADA accessible, much more so than any other theaters I know. So that's totally taken into account. And the large seat issue, I don't think we based it on large people necessarily, but we based it on trying to create a comfortable theater. And as someone who works in New York theaters a lot, where you have to kind of sit like this to fit into the seat, these are unbelievably roomy seats, and the majority of them are 22, 23, whereas a typical theater seat is 18, 19 inches. These are way above norms. I don't know if you've seen them, but 21, 22, 23, and 24. So a big mix of seats, but a lot of bigger seats. Again, not necessarily for bigger people, but to be comfortable. And we've also worked on how to have enough leg room so you're able to see the film in the ideal condition.
And Glenn, this is Glenn, our manager.
The entire back row front section is easily removable with one tool. And those seats all come out for a whole row of wheelchairs, which is much more than most other theaters.
Well, we're hitting the moment at which we're switching gears to lunch, and to give you the opportunity, let me just make a point, give you the opportunity not only to walk around in the space, but as I mentioned earlier, Michael Fisher, we have Michael Fisher here from Rockwell Associates, we have Marion and Joanne, Scott, Bingham, Michael Hare, others from the organization. Invite you to casually chat and enjoy a lunch. Thank you for being here today. Photo? Yeah. There are some folks that would like a group photo.
Okay.
You just maybe step forward.
Is that the guy who came and sat to see before and thought they were too young?
Truly. So, anyway, I mean, I know that already.
Where am I? I need you for 10 seconds. We just do a quick photo, and then you can have just really quick.